talk about the Doctor Who event. We are not the next event, this event, the last event first. We got to do our post-mortem first. No spoilers. Spoilers, sweetie. All right. So I wanted to do a little bit of a post-mortem. Obviously, I made some pretty long videos while I was doing the event, and one of the difficulties I had, which I'll talk about more later, was the fact that trying to make videos as early as possible that were still accurate and concise as new information was coming out all the time. So I figured that it was a good idea to come back and do a post-mortem. There was a lot of confusion. I do want to get back with CCP and see if I can get like some statistics about it. I really would be interested to see the stats behind this event and its uptake versus other events. It seemed like there was a lot more people talking about this event than most events. But, all right. So first and foremost, a breakdown of the event. The event, in my opinion, function on two different axes to like make one of those 2x2 grids. And a lot of people didn't really process this all the way. Okay. On the one axis, you have combat and non-combat, right? So you have combat and hacking. And in this case, combat is, the vast majority of the weight was on the hacking side rather than the combat side, especially starting out. You could eventually get into combat and you could buy your way into combat with filaments, but combat did not provide enough resources in order to sustain itself. And you had to go through 2 stages of hacking before you even saw your first combat filament. So the vast majority of the event was leaned towards hacking over combat. And then the other axis was drops versus track. And the reason why I put that as 2 different axes is because I found myself when I was wanting to complete the track, I focused on the track and I didn't care about the efficiency of it. It was more like I had tasks that I needed to do. How quickly and effectively can I do them in order to advance the track? Now, first of all, I didn't actually try to complete the track until my 3rd day. So by the time I had, now this was because of bugs and stuff, but by the time I had started the actual track in earnest, I had enough stuff to be basically fully into the filament stage, which meant that when I did my track, I was able to sit there and be like, okay, what do I need to do next? And then when I was able to look at it and see what I need to do next, I was able to then do that task, right? Oh, I need to quickly go and find something to hack. All right, I'm going to go 2 jumps or whatever and find a hacking site. By the way, I did it once again in Minmatar space, and once again, that proved to be a very effective way to do it. Do not be where everybody is if you want to do this without competition. So I actually really enjoyed the track because I saw it as, first of all, I collected my resources and then I took on the challenge of the track. Whereas most people would take on the track and then farm after that. So, do I play the Eve for some profit? Well, I play Eve to have fun. So I think that a lot of people tried to focus on the track early when they didn't have their resources, and therefore the tasks in the track seemed very daunting to a lot of people. Interestingly enough, the track, though, was so much less of the rewards than than just running the sites, right? The vast majority of the wealth and basically all of the reasons for it to be the Doctor Who event were all in the sites, not in the track. So I think that people who actually put off the track until later were more successful, but the track feels like, or like it presents itself as if it should be the thing that gets taken care of first. So that was a bit of a of an awkward thing. Okay, so there were 3 different kinds of sites. There were case-based sites. What is the track? I mean, like the event track where you do tasks and you gain points to go down the track and get skins and drugs and stuff as you go down it. The various different tasks that you get given with points. Okay, so there were case-based sites, which there was one hacking site. It was a relic site, tier 1. It was relatively easy to find. As I said, I was able to find them pretty easy because I was in Mimitar space where there wasn't very much competition. I know that some people found some difficulty, and there were times that I found some difficulty, but generally speaking, so one of the things that a lot of people didn't understand was if you hack in HiSec, the best way to do it is to decide on a turf and then scan down everything within that turf. So then when you patrol it, instantly the correct sites, the respawns, stand out to you. So a lot of people, I think, just continue to go like in a straight line or something and ended up getting frustrated that they would go so many jumps and not find a single site. And then even then, when they got to the site, there was like a dozen or so, maybe 10 cans. But you would get maybe a filament BPC every 3 or 4 sites if you're lucky. They seem to come in bursts, but also the way that the items dropped was that there was 4 different items that you need for at least the first tier, and it goes up from there. But you would get a big amount of things rarely, right? So what that meant was that you ended up with too much of this, and none of this. And this feeds into the idea that this was designed to be us to market, doing market and industry and stuff like that. So we were supposed to trade our excess for what we're missing. But a lot of people interpreted it as simply that they had to farm until they got it. And then they did the market tasks as just like the default, just buy one little item just to clear the task. When really that market task is designed to show them, okay, well, now's a good time to finish up what you need to build a filament. There also was specific elements, like I think X37, I think it was, that ended up being this kind of tritanium. It was always necessary. I think that it's one of the reasons why is because it came mostly from the case-based sites, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Either way, you would get the stuff for the curious filaments, which brought you into the hacking sites. The hacking filaments were pretty interesting. There was again, about a little over a dozen sites or cans. They go all the way up from easy and medium in the tier 1, all the way up to sleeper red, angry red, painful in tier 3. And on average, I saw myself as getting maybe 1 skin in tier 1, 2 skins usually in tier 2, and up to 3 skins in tier 3. You could also get the dapper suits and the other stuff in tier 3, but it was very, very rare. I think that this is actually a pretty good idea. I don't know about the high tier stuff, because the issue is that this is one of those things, like people always say, well, if you can do it instanced, then you have to, or why would anybody go and do it in the dangerous areas, right? Why, if we can do instance PvE, no one's going to go out and do it in a place where they can get ganked. And, there's different risk versus reward there. But with a filament that's this good, some of the best sites on demand, I don't see why anybody would go out and do normal relic and data sites during the event. So while I think that the idea of using filaments for exploration is kind of cool, I think it should basically be reserved for either some sort of advanced thing, like an escalation, like something that you build up to, like kind of like the Strange Matter, but in a bigger way, or only for new players, right? Like you can use Filaments for the hacking tutorial. The idea that I thought of was when you jump in, there will be 3 cans. You have to successfully hack all 3 cans, and then the door opens. You've got 30 minutes. And that actually, that puts a little bit of pressure on the person and encourages them to figure out how to hack, break through, and get through. Like, make it so the cans don't explode or anything negative happens. Just let them hack it as many times as they want to. Don't give it to them as a freebie, just like the current tutorial. And I think that would really help people like feel like they got exploration. All right, then there's the combat filaments. Now, the combat filaments, I think, were really, really good and showcased the real value of having filaments that control what goes in. So the issue with having sites is that a site, it's hard to restrict how many people go into a site. And even when you do, people tend to not like this, right? People, I mean, if you think about it, it adds more protection than a filament does, because now they can lock themselves inside and no one can go after them until they leave. And when they leave, they decide where they go. So they're technically safer than in a filament if they use, like, for instance, the SCC sites that have a 3-man lockout in LowSec. But at the same time, a lot of people won't go out and do that. Like, when you're talking about organized content, having to organize the people and then go out and find the sites ends up being kind of painful. I ain't gonna lie. Which is why, like, the newer sites uses escalations. But a filament allows you to kind of bring the adventure to the group. And a filament also carefully constricts how many and what kind of ships can go in it, which means that the challenge can be realized, right? You couldn't just overwhelm the tier 4 because you were only allowed a tier 1 cruiser and 2 of them, and the tier 4s were really, really hard. So you could bling it out if you want to, but it definitely won't be worth it in the long run. And if you do lose something, it's going to be insane. Therefore, learning how to complete the sites and doing them effectively, executing them effectively, and, getting into that risk and being punished if you do it wrong and rewarded if you do it right is preserved through the use of these filaments. You couldn't overwhelm it. You could barely underwhelm. You couldn't necessarily underwhelm it. And farming it was kind of like you had to work on it to build up some filaments to then go and farm it. So I think that ends up being a really, really cool idea. Take the idea of the combat filaments from like the PvP filaments and introduce more interesting challenges for cooperative play that is kind of more on the demand like that. I think that we could see a lot more of that, especially entry-level stuff in that regard. And by entry-level, I mean the stuff that we saw in that event, in the fact that everything uses expensive stuff. Even if you died, you didn't lose that much most of the time. One of the things I found out on the last day was that you can't get potted. Like, the rats didn't pod you. And I was like, if I knew this, I would have been using implants the whole time. But I digress. So next, the rewards were the skins, the dapper suits, and then the track rewards were skins and drugs. Overall, there was also the gold loot. So one of the things I thought was really interesting about the gold loot, which we see again in the new event, is that not only are they introducing commodities, so it used to be that events, the majority of the wealth of the event was in its, in just like whatever its drop is, right? So the new implants or faction modules or cerebral accelerators. So what you'd see is like the people who did the event on day 1 or day 2 got like ridiculous amounts of money. But then by the end of the event, it almost wasn't worth running sites anymore because everything was kind of overwhelmed. Well, about a year ago, they've transitioned more towards using overseer's effects, right? When the enemy's a pirate, it makes sense that they drop overseer's effects. However, that also becomes difficult to kind of parse out in the stats and in the economic report and stuff, because overseer effects are also generated by other places like DED sites. And so it seems that when an event requires a new commodity to be used, they are actually generating new ones now. So I can't remember what we used in Frostline, but with this one we have the gold loot that was turn-inable to all kinds of different empires. And I think, like I said, there's going to be a new one in the next event. I would like to see more work on making the track interesting. I think that the track is now the weakest point in the whole thing, which, like, the fact that you have to hit the buttons, we talk about this every single time, but really the whole track, the rewards on the track, I feel still need to be dialed in a little bit more. It doesn't feel like it's a grand accomplishment to get to the end. The tasks, it'd be nice if the tasks that are a progress, like, helped you understand what that progress was. Like there was an overall task and then you saw what phase you were in, almost like missions that have multiple missions. It just, the event sites have gotten better and better and better, but the tasks themselves and the task track is definitely lagging behind. And I feel like a lot of people that are trying to engage with it will engage with that first and foremost. And it is definitely not putting the best foot forward, right? So I talked a little bit about the instanced stuff. There was some complaints about it being instanced, but as I pointed out, it actually is less protected than other content that you can use to protect yourself via gates. This Fortnite looking picture. I always thought that this looked like CCP Seagull, right? Anyway, here I'll switch to this. The other complaint was about the lore. Now, you're going to be in one of two camps on that regard, and I'm not sure what to tell you about that. I will say that it was true that all steps were taken to make sure that it remained separated, almost to its design detriment. And I'm not overly concerned that this is like a herald for something new. So, but either way, now I do want to talk about how the new players were introduced a little bit. One of the things that I noticed about this event over others was just how much effort that CCP did to ensure that newer players had what it took to be ready. So first of all, they announced, they had this big announcement, including a YouTube video. Where is it? So this is a complete and tailored introduction to the game, specifically pointing to people who are coming to the game from the Whovian world and trying out Eve for the first time. This is, like I said, this is almost never seen. In the past, we've gotten like scope videos that explain in universe kind of what's happening, but CCP's actually gone kind of out of their way to explain some of this stuff. Now, the mechanics often get explained in like patch notes sometimes, but this is putting everything out there first and foremost. Why data? I love that they call it quests. Sorry. Sorry, you can't hear. Yeah, my bad. All right, let me try it again. I'm sorry.
A great war is on the horizon, and its first day approaches. In the Interstellar Convergence, the home of the Time Lords has come to EVE Online. Throughout January, seize the opportunity to explore the space around Gallifrey. To reach Gallifrey, you'll need to create your EVE character, choose an empire, and complete the Air Capsuleer training program.
Now what I
Here,
said
you'll
makes more
grasp
sense.
the fundamentals of EVE Online and learn how to navigate the expansive universe. Odd gravimetric readings have been discovered throughout New Eden, and you need to find the source by scanning down these mysterious cosmic signatures. Fit your ship with a core scan probe launcher, 8 core scan probes, plus data and relic analyzers. These can be bought from regional markets or earned by completing quests for the Explorer Career Agent. Now, with your newly acquired probes, investigate the source of the strange readings, Warp Matrix Convergence. Deploy your probes and scan down the new phenomena.
Warp drive active.
Warp to the location and explore this new area of space. Analyze the containers you come across and hack through their defenses, taking care not to fail the hack more than once. Succeed and collect your rewards.
We questing now,
Iconic
boys.
items from the Doctor's adventures, novelty trinkets, and essential materials for crafting the key to the challenge ahead. With your cargo hold full of plundered loot, return to a space station. Tracking down the fresh mysteries and dangers in New Eden will require you to appropriate the technology you've gathered from the Warp Matrix Convergence site, and either buy or build Warp Matrix filaments by using special blueprints. These filaments will take you to the farthest reaches of space, where you'll find Gallifrey. Beyond the veil, an enemy lies
that
in
spin
wait.
was so good.
They're ruthless, fueled by hate. They won't hesitate to exterminate any threat they face, so prepare for a vicious fight for survival. It won't be easy, so fit your ship for combat using weapons, ammo, and defensive modules. Then fleet up with companions to face off against the universe's most fearsome monsters. Discover EVE Online, find Gallifrey, confront the Daleks.
Weapon systems restoring.
All right. So that was cool. Any rate, so they introduced it with a very clear video. But on top of that, they actually gave us, several content creators, a lot of content creators, access to the filaments early with an understanding that we had a, what's it called? Not a moratorium, but a embargo? Yeah, embargo is, I think, the word I was looking for, which was like we couldn't release our videos until it was the day of. But it made it so that we were able to put work into our videos so that way we had plenty of good videos on not NDA, because that would involve signing something, but it was like it's like a critics embargo. I think embargo is the word. Anyway, sorry, that just amused me. it gave us the opportunity to have a lot of really good guides out the first day. Now, we only were able to see the filament stuff, so a lot of that was skewed. We put a lot of effort into explaining the filament world when it started outside in the hacking sites, which was kind of unfortunate, but it was still really good. And then likewise, or not likewise, like right before the event, they released this, which was a full guide. It shows all kinds of great links to the Eve Academy, how to do all the different stuff, how to do the industry stuff, which I thought was actually a really good thing to add to the event. They talked about the combat stuff. They suggested the abyssal ships, which I still think is a bad idea. And then they link you to continue on with PvP or whatever, which was cool. Then also, I noticed this. There's actually an entire support website that kind of echoes the stuff that was said in that other video. So even if you go to their actual help and support center during that time, you would have found advice to how to do the interstellar convergence. But then the day of, they put it live and once again explain, this is the event, this is how it works, here's the beginner's guide, etc., etc. So they went out of their way to help people know what was going on with the event, which I found very interesting. Normally, they don't really do that. That being said, though, what I encountered mostly in the help area was not new players, but rather returning players trying to get their sea legs back on. Now, is this because they're the people that are most likely to seek help in the help channels? I don't know. But it really does feel like while the event was aimed, at least seeming to be intended, to bring Whovians into Eve, what it seemed to do was bring back nostalgic Eve players who maybe are interested in, or was into Doctor Who during their heyday back in like 2010, 2012. And this is the kind of, they played Eve at some point, but then quit. And this was just the thing that when they hear about it, they're like, oh, wow, that's really interesting. I want to go check that out. I saw a lot of returning players more than new players. Again, it'll be really interesting to see what the new play or what CCP, how CCP, or the CCP stats on the matter. So I guess my final note, or a couple things, is that I also am kind of sad, or this is the first event that I have been sad to see it go, right? Like, normally by the end of the event, I'm kind of done already, but, I was doing it up until the last night. I had 4 more T4 keys. I lost my T4 runner. I hadn't gotten it all together in order to get everything I wanted. I didn't get the scarf. And I was playing more than I did in other events. I remember one night spending time, I think it was on Final Fantasy 14, and I suddenly realized it was in the first day or two. I was like, wait a minute, this is like a race. The first you go into it, the first people to tier 3, tier 4, they're the ones that are going to get the better outfits, and therefore they're the ones that are going to make the best rewards. It's like a race, and that got me to log back in and kept pushing to get deeper into the sites, which I found pretty interesting and compelling. The issue is that there were too many barriers to entry to get you to that point, right? Where you felt like you were empowered to actually do the stuff. So I feel like the barriers to entry was too high, but once you got there, it felt pretty good. Also, in the end, I feel like it was the first event that I felt Now, it was also the first complex event that I can be pretty sure won't come back again. And that might be part of it. there's just so much interesting stuff going on in this event, and the sense of progression within it, that I was hanging out with a few people the final night, and we all agreed that it was kind of sad to see it go, which I think is probably a pretty good sign. The combat sites, I think I forgot to go into the combat sites a little bit. So the way the combat sites worked was the combat sites got more difficult because the boss got harder. The Daleks, there was more Daleks per respawn, and there were more towers, with tier 2 having 2 towers, 1 in each direction, tier 3 having 4 towers, 2 in each direction, and tier 4 having 8 towers. Somebody lied to me and said 6. That's why I died, by the way. 2 in each direction. Or sorry, 4. Yeah, 2 in each of the cardinal directions, more or less. There was buffs that you could get, blue buffs and red buffs, and those were pretty much essential, especially to get higher up in the tiers. And again, I think that this is one of those things that was unique about this event. It wasn't just a combat site. It wasn't just about having the good fit. It wasn't just about coordinating and doing it right, executing it correctly with your teammate. It was about learning the sites itself, because the site wasn't randomized. So you could learn where the blue buffs and the red buffs were. You can refine and perfect your runs as you went, which I thought was really cool and really interesting. That I could not step to tier 4, not because I didn't have the sufficient ship, not because I didn't know how to fly my ship, but because my teammate hadn't mastered the mechanics of the site yet, and therefore, you know, we ran into issues. Or I hadn't learned the mechanics of the site yet, I guess, towards the beginning. Why can't it come? Well, CCP seem to suggest that it probably won't come back. But I think that can they recreate the same experience without an event? Well, they could reskin it as a different kind of event. But I don't think that there's enough issues or tweaks that they could make that I honestly wouldn't want just a reskinned version of the event. I would really like them to work on that first step, right? Because the issue is that even though there was a big combat component of the end game of the event, really whether or not you enjoyed the event really came down to a binary. Do you enjoy hacking? Yes, no. If you enjoy hacking, you'll probably enjoy this event. If you didn't enjoy hacking, you more likely didn't enjoy this event, or at least didn't engage with it too deeply. And I mean, that's fine. I actually would have liked to see it the other way around, where the combat sites are the things that you run to get the pieces, and then the hacking sites are the escalation, or the deeper keys, right? That you run a whole bunch of combat sites. It's like an escalation, right? So think about it this way. Like, let's just think about it as a normal escalation. Have it so that there are anomalies or signatures that you can scan down. So there's combat signatures that you can scan down. Completing the combat signature site gives you an escalation, but that escalation is a hacking site. Right? So that way the hacking sites become the rewards. Same sense here. You could have it be that, the combat sites give you a whole bunch of the strange matter, whereas the hacking sites give you a whole bunch, is where you actually get the real reward. That could have been cool. And I think that simple combat feels like the kind of thing that can be the barrier to entry, but multiple sites of scanning and hacking, it being the barrier to entry, I felt set people up with the wrong expectation. So I don't want the exact same event. I want them to take what they've learned and apply it in the future. Okay. I think that that's about it. I do like the idea of, rather than standard escalations, having it be that you can get parts, and collecting enough of these parts together allows you to, create a filament or a passcode or whatever it is, such that you can step up to the next thing. So it's not strictly speaking a probability-based thing, like a binary probability-based thing, but rather something that you go and you run so many different sites, and then now you have the stuff to go home and build the pieces that you need. I think that that's really cool. And I think that the idea of introducing T1 industry as being something that everyone does, right? Like, Ashtarothi had only one construction line when this started. You know, I have another industry character for industry, but like, I ended up needing to just I trained some industry skills so that way I would have multiple lines on Ashtarothi, because I didn't want to have to switch to my entire industry character with a whole setup and worry about that. Like, I need to just crank out this 30-minute long thing or hour-long thing, you know, whatever. And, you know, in the end, it pops out, and that is just a normal course of events, right? Like, what if a mission, you know, in the first step of a mission, you get the stuff, and in the second stage of the mission, you have to use the thing that you construct from the stuff in the first mission to do something in the second mission, for example. You know, just make it so that the act of opening up the industry window, using a blueprint and building something, demystify it, normalize it. I think that that would be a really good idea. Okay. I think that that's about it for this post-mortem. Is there anybody else have any thoughts? Did I miss anything? I know a lot of people that enjoy hacking, by the way. I also, I will reiterate that one of the things I really like about this event is that, say what you will about the differences between Doctor Who fans and Eve fans, I'm just going to be super stereotypical and say that the Doctor Who fans are going to, on average, be less about like large-scale nullsec, screw you politics and war, and more about discovery and the lore and the universe and solving the mysteries. Which means an event that is focused on exploration and hacking, I think, is actually a really good way of introducing it, right? Because it becomes almost like a filter. So, new Doctor Who fans who try out Eve and enjoy the event, you've basically drilled in on a very specific demographic of people that this event will capture. And that this demographic of people will go on to be interested in exploration and discovery and, you know, trying to figure out the mechanics. And exploration is a very, very, very good profession for a new player to start out with. That person is significantly more set up for success than the average EVE Online player when they first joined the game. And they joined with with a carrot, a very specific carrot on the stick. So often new players say, okay, well, what do I do? And you just say, well, whatever you want, but that's not an answer, right? They want to be told, like, this is a thing to do. This is an objective to have. And these are the things that you have to do in order to get around to it. These are the barriers in your way. They are much, much, much more likely to chase down and learn how to scan and hack correctly if they're trying to get a dapper suit than if that's a thing to do in the game. And so I think that that is something that they should definitely explore more of. And I do find it interesting the kind of player that this is going to cater from. I really want to watch that group, see whether or not we have any long-lasting people, you know, over the course of the next few years, just like Dust and BTEC-R and all these events before it. We're going to keep on running into people that's like, oh yeah, I joined this game because of the Doctor Who event. The vets are salty because they couldn't blow up any noobs. It's funny because like people were both complaining that this was like going to set up noobs to get killed, and also complaining that it was filamented and therefore instanced. And normally you say that it's like, oh, it's a big population, but like literally I've seen the same person argue both of those points, like sometimes in the same, you know, argument. Yeah, exactly. Low Disc Base says that he's been asking around and not a single person has said yes. Again, I don't know if that, so I have two theories about that. That could mean that there's three theories. One, it could mean that we didn't capture any new players with this. Okay, there's a lot of ideas as to why that might be. Two, it takes a while for a new player to decide to seek out help. Therefore, perhaps if you went and polled the new bros at any given time to see whether or not they joined because of the recent event, you're going to get a lot of no's. You might get, and you're probably going to get a lot of people that are returning players, because of that idea that I mentioned earlier, where it could very well be that the new players don't know to access those channels for advice, whereas experienced players are quicker to go do that. But the third one is, even if that's not true, what I find very interesting is it could very well be that all of this additional advice and stuff that they've given, all of these videos, all of these guides, all of the clear progression that they put in it, made it so that the new bros don't need to ask for help. That is the optimistic view. But wouldn't that be interesting? We'll see. Yeah, it'll be a while before we know for sure. Yeah, well, the help channel, the problem with the help channel is that it's vastly different depending on whether or not there's ISD people there or not. Yes, also the advice can be overwhelming. And I've noticed that EVE players, especially in public forums, are really, really bad at giving advice in such a way that doesn't either further confuse matters, give them nothing to work with, or overwhelm them, you know? Like, it's a delicate balance.